On behalf of the Louisiana Center for the Book in the State Library of Louisiana, thank you for joining us for this virtual 2021 Louisiana Book Festival presentation. This program is Being Normal is Vastly Overrated, Young Adult Rom-Coms with Bethany Mangle and Ashley Poston. Bethany Mangle is the young adult contemporary author of Prepped and the forthcoming All the Right Reasons. Although she was born in Korea and raised in New Jersey, she can now be found roaming around the Deep South. When Mangle isn't writing, she enjoys spoiling her dog, baking questionable cakes, and playing video games. Visit her on Twitter at Bethany Mangle or online at bethanymangle.com. Ashley Poston writes stories about love and friendship and ever-afters. A native to South Carolina, she now lives in a small gray house with her sassy cat and too many books. You can find her on the internet somewhere, watching cat videos and reading fan fiction. Ladies and gentlemen, Bethany Mangle and Ashley Poston.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you. After I finished reading your book, Prepped, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to like talk to her about all of these different things.
I know I felt the same way because not only am I obviously a huge book nerd, but it's also like the whole con and, loving sci-fi and just like all of that just really resonated with me for being just a lifelong nerd / geek / whatever you want to call it.
Just I am like a Star Trek nerd, like to infinity and beyond, basically.
And me, I'm like the Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars.
How do you feel about like the reboot of Battlestar?
Okay, so I love it, and I know that that's a controversial take because people are kind of hesitant at first, and I was the same way. I watched the first few episodes, and by halfway through the first season, I was like, I'm not leaving my couch for the next 18 months. I'm just gonna marathon every single one of these.
That was
movies.
that was me and Star Trek Lower Deck. I was like, you can't do animation with Star Trek. That doesn't work. And then I watched it and I was like, oh no, it works. Oh no, it works really well.
And I can see that in your book, all of that enthusiasm. And my favorite is I'm going to spend $1 million trying to get this one little toy, even though, statistically it's full of the ones that you don't want. And, because that just keeps you putting quarters in the machine. And
everyone has that one white whale that they aspire to, right? You have to choose what your white whale is.
But that's my favorite, is getting to see snippets, I guess, of our personal lives and interests kind of being. Now, obviously, I'm not throwing children into duck ponds to teach them survival for the end of the world, but I do like getting to see glimpses, kind of in your work of all that enthusiasm and the love for the geeky kind of science fiction culture and all of that. So
I mean, I have been attacked by geese and ducks before, so that's just.
Well, okay, I have a vendetta against geese because
Canadian geese are the worst.
Oh my gosh, so they are so mean. And when I used to live up in Northeast Ohio, when it would get really cold, it was as soon as it got super, super cold, they would get even crabbier. And I'm like, I get it. You're a bird, you have to live outside. It's horrible, but do you have to terrorize me? I'm just walking across the parking lot to get some writing snacks and you're hissing at me.
And then you're chasing me down the entirety of the green lawn. Oh, so I'm a huge fan of John Green, and I recently listened to his new collection of essays, the Anthropomorphine Reviewed, and in one of the essays he talks about Canadian geese, but more importantly he talks about lawns and how geese are the only animals that actually profit off of our green lawns, because they eat the Kentucky bluegrass and is their favorite snack. So we're just enabling these geese, and it's the worst.
I haven't actually read that yet, but I'm also a huge John Green fan. It's just sometimes when I'm, especially the past year or so, I'll get into these weird like tracks almost, where I want to read one type of book and that's all I really want to read at the moment. So it's odd. It's like I have to be particularly in the mood for something. And sometimes I'll even have like two different genres that I'm reading at the same time. Like I'll have like a YA contempt stack, and then I'll have this, you know, stack of really dry nonfiction about, I don't know, sailboats or something, like just some random topic I happened to find that looked interesting. Because I'm that person who goes into a bookstore and just buys a bunch of stuff. And later I'm like, why
did I buy this?
Think that I wanted to know about the manufacture of pinwheels. Like,
but I mean, like, why not, right?
I'm like, okay, I bought it, I might as well read it. And then I end up becoming obsessed with pinwheels for 3 months or something.
It is the hyperfixation for me.
Yes. You hit the nail on the head.
Speaking of which, in your novel Prepped, like what made you want to like talk about doomsday preppers, and like what was your like how much, what did you read, like what did you watch? Did you watch that like TLC like reality show?
I didn't, but I get that a lot. I was at work and I work in nuclear power. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of like safety rules and things like that. And some of them don't make sense. So think like tsunami off of a lake. And I was watching this emergency drill one day and I thought, wow, what would happen if you took this like really rigid standard for safety and emergency response and everything, and you just made that your whole life? Like, wouldn't that be so bizarre? And I just kind of went from there. So some of it is from my own personal experience, like pulling on that, just kind of so I didn't have to research. But yeah, there was a lot of like Googling, how do I grow plants with like fish? How do I do whatever? So yeah, my Google search history was quite questionable for about a year while I wrote that.
Yeah, the only thing I know about growing plants is everything I learned from living with the land at Disney World. Like that's it. That's all I know. I know nothing else. Just everything on that boat ride. That's it.
I don't even try with plants. Like if I just look at a plant, it just dies. I mean, it doesn't matter how healthy it is. If I walk by it or look
like,
in its
no!
direction, it just shrivels and dies. Like I have a black thumb.
Me too.
So
I have like I used to have a cactus that like I had kept alive for like a year and a half. His name was Elvis. I talked to him every day just to keep him alive. And then I went away for 2 weeks and I came back and I like poured some water into his, you know, bowl, and he just started floating. And I'm like, no, Elvis, you died again.
Oh, poor Elvis.
Poor Elvis. Poor Elvis. But yeah,
so what about you with so with Bookish and the Beast, and just kind of with your like series in general, like how did you, like, do you draw on your own experiences for that, or did you have to research some of it a little bit more? Because I know, like, you know, there's the con culture, but then this one in particular, it seemed like there was a lot more going on, like too, in the background, and just a lot more kind of spreading out just beyond that whole con environment. So I was just curious if this one was kind of a different experience for you.
It was like my first book, Geekerella, was about like, you know, a fangirl in con culture, and like how like your fandom community can be like your found family, and like that's like a really strong like through line with a lot of my books is like found family, and like you like have the family that like you make and you want to be around, and people you don't want to be around, like you don't have to like stick with them if you don't want to, and like so I that was what Geekerella was about. And then Princess, I researched a lot about the like the toxicity in fandom culture, especially involving like the stars that like have absolutely no control over their characters, but somehow like fandom thinks that they do, or that they are their characters. And we're still seeing a lot of that now, especially with like younger teens. And like I'm in the Genshin fandom right now, Genshin Impact, and there's a lot of younger teens who are like they're hate rating, and they're like trying to dox these like voice actors who like do not control this game. And I'm just like, what are you doing, guys? Please stop. This is not the way. And so And so I researched a lot in Princess and the Fangirl about like the toxic part of fandom culture. And that was like really eye-opening for me, because I went back and I like read like a lot of different accounts, and I read like some research papers on like how fandom is both like a boon and also a good thing. And it was a lot of fun to write that one. And then in Bookish, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do a Beauty and the Beast story, and we'll see where that goes. And I knew Vance was going to be this sort of like guy who was not like Darian, who was like a full-on fanboy, and was not like Ethan or Jess, who were just kind of resigned to where they were. But he was kind of like this like struggling person in the middle who was trying to like upkeep this persona that he had, while like not being that persona anymore. So it was a lot more personal to me, because I know as like authors, we're like trained to like have like a forward-facing persona, and it's not actually who we are in the background. Like there's a lot of talk right now about parasocial relationships, and I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit in Bookish. So yeah, that's Bookish. And also Bookish is like set in my hometown, so there's actually a castle house here. It's like a mile away from my house.
I meant to tell you that in my hometown there is also a castle house. Yes. I have to go. It's seriously right around the corner. So next time I go by, I'll try to take you a picture, because I'm actually visiting right now. And I remember the girl who lived in the castle house was on my bus, I think like in kindergarten, and we would drive around the corner and I'd be like, ah!
Oh my God. Like, so I wish people lived in like my castle house, but it has been vacant for as long as I can remember. Like someone built it, but they never moved in, and then they wanted to zone it for a restaurant, but they couldn't because it was in residential. And so now it's just existing and no one's in it. And there's these huge like stone lions out front. And I'm like, this would be a great house if I could afford it. But yeah, so that's Bookish. Long story short, I just wanted to write about a castle house. That's it.
I mean, I actually, when I got to the castle house, I went, no way, a castle house. Like, what are the odds that, I've also seen a castle house in my hometown. So
does every small American hometown have a castle house? That's my question.
I don't know. We need to have like a poll now. Do you have a castle house in your hometown? And if so, take a picture and post it.
Exactly.
We need to have a contest. Though I will say the castle house in my town is not very castle-y. Like, it visually looks like a castle, but it's not like enormous. Like, you would never fit. I mean, you could fit that library maybe in the house, but you wouldn't have anything left to like live in. So I don't get the impression it's really big. It's just like, it looks exactly like a castle. So
it's still so cool though. And like a library is as big as you make it,
That's true.
They can be small. It's fine.
Or you could be like me and like hide books under the bed and like stack them on your coffee table and like
use them as a coffee table.
Make a coffee table out of the books you haven't read.
That's it.
But I really liked Vance's character because I've kind of been embracing, I'll just call it, being a total disaster as my brand at this point. Like, I filmed my unboxing in my pajamas. I was so done last year, and someone asked me
times.
I know. Somebody asked me for an unboxing, and like, I had literally not even brushed my hair. And I was like, you want an unboxing? Okay. And I just hit record and grabbed some scissors and was like, this is all you're gonna get. Okay. And just went and did it. And I realized, like, wow, that was so liberating, because if I had not just kind of had that snapping moment, and that's why I love when Vance just kind of like snaps and has that moment where he's like, I'm just gonna tell everybody off. And I don't want to get into spoilers or anything like that, but in his head, when he's just like, I'm so done with this, and I'm not,
like, no more. I'm just gonna
kind of like, I've been banished, and this is, it's not fair, and now my
parents hate me.
Right. All I have is the dog. So
the dog is good. The dog used to be a goat, actually.
Really? Okay, so there's a story there. What's with that?
Well, I was doing research on goats as pets, and it turns out you need more than one goat to have like a happy like goat. So I didn't want to write in two goats. So I was like, I'm just gonna do a dog. So I changed Sansa to be a dog instead.
I actually have goats in a project that I'm working on now because we have this ice cream stand near us that we call the goat place, and we used to go to when we were kids because I don't know why someone was like, I know what I'll do. I'm going to open an ice cream stand and then I'm going to put goats in it. But that's exactly what happened. So they had those little like food dispensers where you put in a quarter and it gives you a little bit of food.
Those turn things, yeah.
So like you can't go over to them with your ice cream or they'll try to eat your ice cream. So you have to either feed the goats first and then be covered in like the goat food pellet dust and then eat your ice cream, which seems
and also
like
the
a bad
slobber
idea.
because like they lick your hand.
Yes. Or you have to eat your ice cream and then still like have ice cream on you because you're a little kid, so you're covered in it, and then go over and try to feed, I guess, also little kids and then try to feed them, but it's all sticky and gross. And yeah, I don't know. It just seems like a bad combination, but it works.
That seems like a great combination actually, because like while you're eating ice cream, you just have goats just staring at you. It's just,
I know.
it sounds perfect, honestly. Either that or chickens. Chickens would be great.
You know what? And it's funny you say that because my second book, All the Right Reasons, that's coming out next year, that one's set in Key West, so it actually does have chickens because they had those wild chickens that just kind of run around all over the place. So
that's amazing. So what was it like debuting in a pandemic?
Like that.
I always hate asking that question, but I always feel like I have to at this point.
No, it was just so odd, especially because I had no frame of reference. So I feel like it might have even been like more of a like stark for people who had done it before and knew how things were supposed to go. Because I mean, I was looking at stuff like, I can't tell if this is the pandemic or if this is how they always do it. And then there were other things where it was like just mass chaos because I didn't know what I was doing and I was fumbling and didn't want to necessarily, reach out and ask people for help and be like, hey, can I pick your brain on this? Because it's the pandemic and everybody is, kind of just having a meltdown, and that's perfectly fair, and I just didn't want to bother too many people. So I just kind of flailed my way through it, and I think it went okay. And now the second time around, I just feel like, okay, I know what I'm doing now, more than I did before anyway. I don't know that I'll ever be used to it.
I'm like 7 books in and I still don't know what I'm doing. So let's be honest, that's never going to change.
Well, and plus I'm that shy, introverted, like nerdy person who also is really loud. So it's a weird combination of, interacting with people because they think that you're really extroverted and you're blah, blah, blah. So when people come up and they want to talk to me and things like that, I'm like, okay, I should have like some kind of canned thing that I'm going to say. I should plan. And so the first time around, I was really panicked about having a script. So I knew what to say, or I knew how to have an event. And now, as you know, from this one where we didn't plan anything, we're just, I just like that better. And it took me that pandemic year, I think, to just let go of this idea that I had to have the plan. And maybe that's a good thing to have, especially in this industry, where I just don't have to, everything doesn't have to be perfect. I can just wing it and it's going to work out because I'm going to make it work out if I have to, basically.
Even like non-pandemic times, like you still had to have that mentality. So like that's one thing that didn't change. Like you felt like you had a little more control over everything, but it was just the way that things ran. You then like quickly realized you didn't have control over anything. You never have control over anything, except for like the words you put on the page. And so yeah, like that's the best mentality to have, because like everything's going to go tits up eventually.
I mean, so
So
what about you? I heard that you know, had moved recently and everything. So I'm sure like with everything going on, that has to be just so much fun because moving is great any other time.
oh my God. So I don't know if you know this, but the housing market during the pandemic is really bad. It took me a year to find a house, but I finally did, and I love it. It's a great little house. But like the worst part is having to pack up everything and then like having to like redo my office again because my office was so good and now it's nothing. How about you?
Yeah, so when I moved, let's see, about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, um, I first of all, I always regret the number of books I own. Okay, because I have these little tiny stick arms, and so I try to pick up this box. I'm like, nope, no, I overcommitted, too many books. So I unpack the whole thing and put it in a smaller box, and then I end up having to take a million trips just to get everything where it's going.
I'm still taking
So
trips. So
oh, it's
it's
horrible,
so
but
bad.
well, and my dog, he's getting to that age where he is very nervous.
Mhm.
And he was never like not nervous to begin with, but now he's just more nervous. So
Does he have a thunder jacket?
I am his thunder jacket.
Oh
He's like 70 pounds, and if there's a storm, unfortunately, in our new house, which is like this big and it's on top of a crawl space, so it's
my
off the
God.
ground.
No.
When it thunders, it literally shakes our house, the entire thing. Um, and he just can't handle it. So he will try to sit in my lap and then put his nose in the crook of my arm or something to
Poor
hide from
thing.
the thunder. But he's 75 pounds, so that doesn't work out so great because I'm like, hey, okay, I got it. I'm trying to see around him to do
Trying
stuff
to
like
watch TV.
I can't get up off the couch. I mean, so that's
No.
very stressful too, because as soon as I touch one of his things, and we've moved several times with this dog, so once the boxes start appearing, he knows something's happening. Then I take his stuff and start putting it in boxes, and now it's just mass panic because his toys are in a box and his blankie's in a box, and
And he doesn't have any. Oh, poor doggy.
I know he
Oh,
acts like I'm torturing him. I'm like, you're gonna get it back as soon as we get out of the car. I have labeled this bin so that you can have your stuff back right away and feel comfy. And
no, too long. It was too long. Oh, that's adorable though. That's
I
so
know it just
cute.
makes like writing kind of difficult though when
Mhm.
I have he will run over and get his blanket like he's a toddler and then put it in his mouth and then just whine into it while he is upset, which is fine, except it's kind of like having a furry alarm clock that you cannot turn off for 10 hours. So I'm trying to write and da da da, and just in my ear is just this high-pitched whining that makes it through my noise canceling headphones. Something about that pitch just cuts right through it, and I'm like,
Yep.
all right, well, this is just going to be the dog remix of every single song I'm listening to.
I have a cat who is like not yet moved in with me because she's older. She's about 12, and so she doesn't move very well. So I'm like getting everything situated before
Oh,
I
okay.
bring her over. Because right now she's living with my parents and it's fine over there, and she's been there for a few years and she's really comfortable. So like I am just waiting for the day to like bring her over, and she has this like really deep like smoker meow that like cuts through everything. And I cannot wait until that interrupts every single one of my like Zoom calls in the future, because it's gonna be like it's gonna be great. I'm so excited.
That happened to me a couple times when especially when prep was coming out and people were still getting used to Zoom and being at home and doing all these things like on the computer.
Mhm.
And It was just basically I was on like a podcast or something, and it was at least 15 minutes of us just profusely apologizing to each other because our dogs were taking turns barking in the background. So I think that's another thing I have to adjust to, as well as just, you know, just understanding that there's no way that I am going to escape my dogs just waiting to sing me the song of their people outside at the top of their lungs. As soon as I hit the record button or the microphone on or whatever it is, they're going to start, you know, play fighting or something to that effect as soon as possible. And then if you're my big dog, he doesn't destroy things or like to take things, but his favorite in the whole world is as soon as I get a box, he wants to go and see if he can stick his head in it, if there's anything in there for him, which is fine until it's books, and then it's like,
oh,
I'm trying to do an unboxing. Get your face away from my books.
nope, never. It's like, no, it's my books. And yeah.
Not that it matters, because I remember when Prep's final copies came and I was so excited. My UPS driver
how did
hates
it
me.
feel to like hold it for the first time, to like see it?
I think it just melted. When even just seeing the cover for the first time was really like, whoa, because I had no idea the direction that they were going to go. They just said, you know, hey, you'll have a cover tomorrow to look
It's
at.
such a cool cover. I love it.
I just didn't even know what to do with it. But yeah, it was funny because it's just such a different style. So even though like Bookish is really kind of quirky and fun and kind of, I feel like the same style almost as Prepped, in that it has,
it's like a vector style. So
yeah, that they're like that, but they're still very like different. So I just think it's really interesting to see like these artists, you can take a concept and just make it so unique, even though it's still the same like art style. And I'm sure there's all kinds of nuances. I can't draw a stick figure, so I don't ask me. But I think it's so interesting to see all the covers that came out around the same time, and then like, wow, look at like what everybody can do with these. Like it's just incredible to me, because like I said, I know artistic ability, so you don't want to see any cover that I tried to draw for myself.
it reminded me a lot of the Fallout graphics that were coming out around that time, like the Prepper Fallout, like whatever the video game graphics. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And it was like leaning into like to that kind of like niche genre, and I really think it was really smart. And
yeah, I'm obsessed with video games too, so that's also something that I enjoyed about like the culture that you built and all the characters that you have. Is it just seems like it's the kind of the nerd combination, I guess I'll call it, because I feel like there are times that I've read books and they're supposed to be kind of a nerdy character or a geeky character, and I don't really fully buy it, because it seems like I think that this author is maybe not a nerd, because there are so many different hobbies that tend to kind of like intersect with each other. And I love being in those groups where you know, maybe you're talking about con stuff and then everybody gets their phones out. Let me show you this cosplay I did at this one place, or let me show you this. And
happens so many times in like actual like nerd groups. They're like, oh my god, have you seen this like cosplay of like human Vaporeon? It's so cool.
Or like, oh, this one time we were playing D&D and then everybody like and you know,
it's
and
like,
then
have you heard of children's card games? Why, yes, I have.
Oh, I love all your figurines in the background.
They're all either My Hero or Yu-Gi-Oh, and I have no excuse. I have no excuse at this point. It's fine.
I have on my desk I have Miranda Priestley figurine from like the Devil Wears Prada, because then I feel like if I'm like scrolling Twitter when I should be writing, I look over and I was like, okay, Meryl Streep will save me from myself. Well, yeah, Meryl Streep is judging me. I should get back to work. And then on the other side, I have Roy Mustang from Full Metal Alchemist, because you know, my favorite.
Roy Mustang. Roy Mustang.
Yeah.
Especially from Brotherhood, though.
I actually have not watched Brotherhood.
What?
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so you need to watch Brotherhood. It is like, I grew up on like the original like animation of Fullmetal Alchemist, so I didn't know like what happened in Brotherhood, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they changed so much, and it's so much better. It's so
Is
good.
it? See, I'm just so afraid it's going to ruin the original, and I love the original so much that I have wanted to so badly, but then every time I'm going to get started, I just worry like, oh no, what if they change something and I don't like it, and then I just, freak out about it for a week or
It takes everything that you loved about the original and it just like puts it into better context, and like there's like almost every single like plot line is like, tied up really well, and it's like the entire story is like a circle basically. It is mind blowing because you watch the last episode and then you go back to the first one and you're like, no. It's so good. It's so good. So highly recommend Brotherhood. But speaking of memorable characters, I loved Becca. Like Becca was so good, especially like having grown up in like the sort of like family dynamic that she did with her parents being very overbearing and very like crass and kind of terrible without like giving too much away. And like she's still like so loving and giving, and she's still so warm, and it's like especially towards her younger sister Katie, and it was such a good juxtaposition. I loved Becca so much, and like her voice was just so snappy. It was so good.
Well, thanks. I love her. I mean, obviously, like that she came out of my brain, so I feel like I'm biased, but she's definitely I just like what she stands for, and I really had a lot of fun. And it was kind of like I was saying earlier, about when I was reading your book, I thought, okay, I can see so many similarities here, in how basically these main characters are going about their lives and just kind of again winging it and just trying to do their best even though things are not great, especially like in their personal lives.
It's like they're like the antithesis to their own situation. It's so good, especially Becca though. Like she is like the light in this really like dark tunnel that like I'm sorry, I love it. I love her so much.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. My mom is actually, I give my mom complete credit for adding in the little sister, because I remember when I was drafting and kind of going, okay, I'm a super chaos pantser, so I don't really plot anything. I don't even write my scenes in order. So
what's that like? Oh my God.
I have major scenes in my head. Like that's how I know when I want to write something, is at one point I'll have like 4 or 5 different smaller scenes in my head that really stand out to me. And I'll write those. So I'll have like chapter 1, chapter 14, like chapter 26, and I'll just have these big pieces. Then I have to figure out how they get from point A to point B, and I write that segment. Then I'll go to these two, and how do they get from here to here, and I'll write that piece. So it's at one point I'm like, okay, I can't connect these two parts. What do I do? And my mom said, why don't you add in a younger sibling? I'm like, okay, absolutely. I was like, and a dog, because I have to.
You have to add a dog. Like you have to add animals to like any sort of like dark dynamic, because like animals are just they just help out so much.
Well, and I think it works too, like with the way that with the dog in Prepped, she's cute, but if she wasn't there, it's not the end of the world. But with Vance,
it would be the end of the world. That would be one of the situations they would prep for. Duh.
But with Vance, I feel like it really softened his character in the beginning, because at first you're like without like seeing how much he loves this dog and takes care of the dog, and and well, plus your plot hinges on having the dog. Mine doesn't. She was just kind of a cute addition, but I feel like I really liked the way that you made him sound a certain way, but he was totally relatable at the same time. And I feel like that's a really hard balance to strike, especially for so long, where you can look at somebody and you can be like, okay, this character's like a little gross, but not like follow you into your job or around town, kind of gross with cameras. So
Yeah, so a lot of the readers that were going into Bookish were coming off of Princess and the Fangirl, and he's in Princess and the Fangirl as the villain, well, as like one of the villains. So I had to find a way to make him relatable and to like make him not gross, right? Not like villainous and like he's more of like an anti-hero than a hero. Like he's never like the hero of the story, right? But so I had to find a way to make him like relatable, and I was like, well, Vance himself thinks he's a bad person. So that in and of itself makes him relatable, because we also think we're bad people sometimes, even if like we're really not. So like, and then I just had to have like a dog, because like dogs are great judges of character, and it's a great way to like introduce like that, like, you know, things are not as they seem, but like if you're told long enough that you are something, eventually you start to believe it. And so that's like what I had to break down in Bookish and the Beast, especially with Vance, because he was told for so long that he is this thing, and he had to come to the realization that maybe he's not. So that had to start with the dog.
yeah, but I love that, like the kind of evolution that he goes through from you know, kind of almost not caring, like just it's just okay, blah, and just kind of being that blah way and kind of in a slump and stuck, and kind of watching that whole process of coming into like the realization of who he is over the course of, you know, meeting new people and, you know, just seeing the world in a totally different way. You're like, wow, okay, like that just struck me as being like so realistic, because I know, like, when I'm feeling down on myself, I just kind of tend to do the same thing where I just like dwell or just want to like stare at the ceiling or like, and then it takes something like even just, you know, having your dog around sometimes to feel better and feel like, okay, maybe other people don't see me right now the way that I see me, and I'm just in a slump and I need to come out of that. So I just felt like that was a really authentic process versus like a hard, like at this point I'm going to immediately do a switch. And then also being able to separate like the everybody thinks I'm bad, I'm a bad person, from I did something totally wrong, misread something in a really big way and made a huge mistake, and now I have to fix it. I you know, I really thought that that was an interesting part too, just seeing that and how he can relate to the outside world in a totally different way without having like pages and pages of dwelling and worrying, which is something that I like struggle with as a writer, is being able to make those changes without having these huge passages of thinking in circles.
Yeah, no, like first drafts are always thinking in circles for me. There's like I delete so much internal monologues, especially in first person and like the first and second drafts, because like I also do that. I also like every single character like worries itself and like worries themselves in circles. And so like my editors are always the ones that are like, hey, we might need to like scoot it on a bit and not have them be turtling the entire book. That's okay. And I'm just like, but I turtle, so why can't my characters turtle? Like I'm a pro at turtling. This is what I do. So
right, they say write what you know. So does that mean that my character just sits there in their old sweatpants on the couch and stares at the ceiling for 6 hours? Because that's what I do. So.
Yeah. No, that is the entire story. Just someone sitting on a couch with like some like popcorn that they don't eat, just like staring at the ceiling. That's it. Nothing else. Maybe a dog. But
well, and I like how your villains are modern villains, like the paparazzi kind of you know, playing such a big role. And that's something that like I feel like we see with the tabloids, or even you know, like with the British royal family, and how, you know, their paparazzi are different from, you know, our paparazzi here in the States. And And also just like the whole want to being a YouTuber thing, wanting to put your whole life out there. I feel like those are very like modern things, but I really liked how you adapted that to the overall like, Beauty and the Beast feel too, of it's not just one person is horrible, it's like their ability to just be kind of a mob on the outskirts of, these people who are just trying to do their best and
which like
trying to help
isn't
each
Disney's
other.
Beauty and the Beast. Like just the entire mob, just have them on social media instead.
Yeah,
Like,
but I love
fun.
that because I just felt like it was a really creative way to adapt it to like modern life, and just having this mob just be either on social media or even just like the way that they follow around celebrities, which kind of brings me back to, you mentioned John Green earlier. He is one of the few writers that I could probably pick out if I saw them in person. But I always joke where I'm like, I feel like as authors, like we have this perfect balance of being able to just disappear and not be like, no matter how big you get, there are some of these huge names you could sit next to me like in a restaurant or on a train.
Wouldn't know.
I would have no idea unless you told me. And that's just not the case for people who are on TV or in movies. And I can see why if you came into the business when you were really young and now all of a sudden you were like a child star or something, maybe you didn't know what it was going to be like, and now you can't get out of it, and just feeling really trapped by all of that attention. I can see why if you're on TV, that could be really like, wow, overwhelming, and you would feel like you were stuck and you couldn't, like, you can't change your face. What are you gonna do? So
right, you know what, their parents should have prepped them for it, like how Becca's parents like prepped her for everything, literally everything. Just toss her in the deep end, see if she survives. If she does,
literally
good.
just toss her in the deep end.
Literally just toss her in the deep end. If she survives, good. If she doesn't, we gotta spare. It's fine. But the parents, like Becca's parents, are, speaking of parents of main characters, they're terrifying. You managed to make parents that, like, I believed wholeheartedly thought they were doing what was best for their children, but they are terrifying in like how they go about it. And I just, there's a dog.
They had to make an appearance. They just had to.
Yes. But it's like, I never once doubted for a minute they believed they're like what they were doing. Like they believed in the Kool-Aid they were drinking. And I feel like there is like this parallel to a lot of people, like a lot of things that are happening today too, with like a certain cult mentality. And it's just, it was very jarring to like read that, because I was like, oh, this is so many parallels, so many parallels. And
it was really weird to realize that I had like written a book about the end of the world before what felt like the actual end of the world. And when I was in stores and stuff, like just like going out and trying to do signings and talking to people, one of the most like frequent questions was like, oh, did you write this because of the pandemic? And
you wrote it before the pandemic.
Way before the pandemic. So just because it came out last year, like last February, people were like, oh, is that what inspired this? And I'm like, no,
can't write books that fast, can't publish books that fast.
Right. So that was just a really bizarre kind of parallel. And the one thing that really always sticks out in my memory is there is a section of Prepped where she's talking about how they have colored lights in their neighborhood, and each light has a different meaning for a different kind of emergency. And I had a purple light, and it was for epidemics. And my editor wrote as a comment, oh, that's clever, or something like that. And I remember when the book came out and I thought back at that part, I went, this whole interaction just aged really poorly because, at the time it seemed like, okay, well, what else could go wrong? Oh, there could be,
Oh,
and
tongue
then,
in cheek,
and then you're right. Like the thought that it could be happening was just like totally beyond anything that I could like conceive of. So that was a little bit odd, and I was a little worried that that it would be upsetting to people, even potentially, to read about prepping at a time when you kind of did want 80 pounds of toilet paper in your closet. So
Yeah,
but
and like Prepped came out like right before like the big shutdowns too, right? Like it was.
yeah, well, it was in February, so it was when things were still very uncertain, and I mean they still are very uncertain, um but luckily it seemed like it was in such a different direction in general that it wasn't like I said, I was just worried that people would be so tired at that point that it would not seem so much like something they would connect with. But it was actually the opposite, where I had some people saying like, it was kind of fun to just be able to like almost have something fun or funny or quirky or weird, and see like a different angle where it wasn't so realistic and true to life that it was something that just felt overwhelming in our current situation. So and luckily I don't have to worry about that for next year, because that's about reality television and it's just totally in a different direction. So
I love like stuff about reality television, so please tell me more.
All the Right Reasons is coming out next year, and so that one is it's basically, so I have my main character and her mom, they accidentally go viral because she thinks that her journal entry is on private, and it is absolutely not.
Oops.
So these television producers get in touch with them because she's ranting about her her dad, who is they're divorced. So there's a show that's almost like The Bachelor, except it's for single parents, and they bring along their kids to these shows, and together they kind of try to, it's a build your own family type of situation. Except that my main character then starts falling for one of the kids on the show, which is obviously not a good thing. And it's just supposed to be kind of like, a funny spin-off on what can happen on reality TV. So that was just a totally different like creative direction, and
so cool though, and like warranted too, because like it's nice to distance yourself a bit from like doomsday for a while and instead focus on reality TV and how you can't hide anything and it's fine.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, when you have people watching your every move, how does that change your relationships and how you act and things like that? So and what about you? Are you working on anything new right now, or anything that you're excited about?
So at the moment I am working on things that are not announced yet, but one of them might have to do with Among the Beasts and Briars, my fantasy YA, that came out a month after Bookish and the Beast, because like pandemic pushed back Bookish like 4 months, and so like they were like back to back, and it was a train wreck. It was fun. I enjoyed last year a lot. But next year, my adult debut, The Dead Romantics, is coming out, which is what I wrote during the pandemic, because I was like, I want to write about a ghost story and about writing. I want to write a book about writing, so I did. And it's about a ghostwriter who has to go home for her father's funeral at their funeral home that her family owns. And it turns out that she's being haunted by the ghost of her recently deceased editor for her ghostwriting gig. And he's just like real hot. So she has to like figure out how to like help him move on while also like finishing the book, like the ghostwriting book that she can't finish because like her heart's been torn to pieces by like a few different things. And he's just like, please for the love of God, just finish this so I can like get out of your hair. And then obviously they fall in love. So
That sounds amazing. I will have to check that out.
thank you. It comes out next summer, I think. So I am very excited. It is.
What's that like having to debut, but in a different age category? Like, is that just really like, is that difficult, or is that just more like, just a little bit of a pivot, or?
Well, so I wrote my first like 6 books in 6.5 anthology. Is that a 7? That's a 7. My first 7 books in YA, and like I've always like, my voice has always been very like YA centric because fanfic and all that. I used to do a lot of like fanfic for like properties that have like teens in them, right? So like and like I wrote fanfic as a teen, and so like I think I was just comfortable in that voice, and so I really enjoyed like changing my voice a little bit and writing for an older crowd, because it means I can do a lot of fun like sexy times things. And also I don't have to worry too much about like having to like pull through like morals, or like have like big like sweeping metaphors for like, oh, why this is bad, or like I don't have to like teach a lesson, because the lessons have already been taught by the time a person gets to an adult novel, so they already have like preconceived notions of like things. So it's really nice to like be able to like write in those like tropes and then subvert them slowly. And yeah, I liked it. It's fun. It's really not much different from my YA. It's just aged up a little bit with some sexy times. That's it.
With some sexy time.
And some bad language. That's it. There might be an inappropriate joke or two. There's a ghost boner joke, which is fun. Sorry,
well, I mean,
I put editing this.
I mean, so with the whole how, what category is your YA and, discussion,
Mhm.
I am always going to curse in my YA novels because I have a filthy mouth.
I do
and
too.
always have. So, including when I was a teenager. So my characters are not saying, oh, fudge. And to me, that just is part of like my experience of being a teenager. I don't want to sanitize that, but I don't want it to be excessive, but I know that I have had, people ask in the past, is there bad language? And I'm like, if that is something that that you don't want your, your teen reading, then then this is absolutely just not going to be a good fit, because I always try to dig into those, kind of darker themes. So having like a lighter, funnier, like more overt storyline, but then underneath it, there's supposed to be like, darker undertones and things. And it's that way, like in Prepped, in my next books. That's just always going to be me really consistently. So I just feel strongly about writing towards that like upper YA age group. And there have been times I've even looked at things and gone, I think this might be straying a little bit too far outside of that boundary, because it is kind of ambiguous. So I just make a judgment call. And I feel like that's something when you write in YA, is just a personal decision that we all have to make of what kind of content we're going to put in and where we're going to draw boundaries and lines and things like that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And like it's like different like based on genre too. Like apparently YA fantasy can get away with so much more than what YA contemporary can. And I'm just like, come on, guys. Like really, are we gonna draw the line here at this genre? Is this what we're doing? So yeah, it's just it's like there are no rules, or if there are rules, the rules don't matter. It's like, whose line is it anyway? Like,
yeah, I think we all just kind of make it up as we go along. But if I could go into like writing adult books, I don't even know that I could make that shift like in my head of not wanting to, as you said, kind of like gloss over certain things or have those like teachable moments and things like that. Because especially writing in first person, I feel like I am trying to put everything into that lens of being younger. And I am just a large child. I'm not actually an adult, so I feel like that works. And that's something that I try to keep like fairly consistent as I go from book to book without wanting my narrators to necessarily all sound the same. I just kind of want to keep that viewpoint that they have of being informed by what they think are the major points in their life up to this point. So for Becca, it's, hey, I'm I've been in this community for so long, and this feels like the biggest and loudest thing that I have to deal with, in my life. Whereas in Bookish, it's more of how am I going to keep my family together, or how am I going to keep, my career going? And these two very different kind of big, high notes, in their lives that are kind of the loudest to them and drowning out everything else.
Whereas like adult is a little more nuanced, where like there isn't like one thing that you're like that you're zeroed in on. It's a bunch of little things that are like coming together to form like a hurricane. Like, so
yeah, I feel like when I was a teenager, I was very focused on one particular thing of like, oh, I have an issue with friends, or oh, I have an issue with this. Whereas, as an adult, you're just like, my brain is bees. Like, I have to pay my electric bill, like, and I have to write this book. And
I am just 7 ferrets in a skim suit.
It's exactly. Like...
I am not human. Don't perceive me. But on that note, I think we should start wrapping up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, we've covered so much, and I am, I was just really, really excited to get to talk to you, because I feel like there's not many authors who necessarily write in what I would call a quirky genre. And so I have heard, our names come up together a few times. And, that's always just really exciting to get to, meet somebody, especially since you have so many books out, that it's like, oh my gosh, this person who existed before I even had a book out. It's like, and now I get to talk to you, and that just seems wild. So this has been really fun.
I was just really lucky. It's like 90% luck, 10% like pertinacity, 1% talent, maybe a little bit of talent, but like only talent in the fact of finding luck. So, but yeah, like I had so much fun talking with you, and it was a lot of fun because I adored prep. I cannot wait for your next book. When does it come out? Next year?
In February.
Okay, February of next year. I will have to put it on my calendar because you are an auto buy for me now. So.
Yeah, same for me. I'm definitely gonna have to check out your adult, because you had me at Ghost. I am fanatical about them. So
it's like Ghost meets the Bold type.
Chef's kiss, perfect.
So good. But yeah, so where can we find you online?
So you can find me on Twitter, and I'm just Bethany Mangle. You will I think I'm currently something like Bethany the Mangler for for Halloween, but my regular screenshot or my regular screen name is the same as just my first name and my last name. And same thing for my website and everything, because I am terribly uncreative at coming up with any type of handle. So everything is just Bethany Mangle. Luckily, there's only one, to my knowledge, Bethany Mangle around.
Lucky.
So
there's like 5 different Ashley Postons, and so like someone else took my handle and like a bunch of different. It's fine. I'm fine. So you can find me on Twitter at Ash Poston, but you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Hey Ash Poston.
I love it. I will have to look you up on Instagram. I don't think I have you on there. I am terrible at taking pictures, but I enjoy looking at everybody else's. So I will have to check you out on there too.
Same. And I'll have to follow you back. So it was so nice getting to talk to you.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you too.
All right. Well, bye. And we're done.
And we're done.
Thank you for watching this presentation of the virtual 2021 Louisiana Book Festival. Please visit our official bookseller, Cavalier House Books, and receive 20% off all featured festival titles through the end of the year. A special thank you to our festival sponsors. The Louisiana Book Festival will return on October 29th, 2022.